Watch a man in his 90s kneel in a dry Arizona gully and stack flat rocks by hand, one layer high, across a channel cut 12 feet into the earth. No cement, no machines, a pile of loose stone you could kick apart with your boot. A neighbor scoffs that the first flash flood will erase it in an afternoon. Around them, the Southwest is drying out, streams cut into dead trenches, meadows gone to dust, reservoirs shrinking. And the fix this old man is copying comes from people who died 1,000 years ago. Everyone said it would wash away. It didn't. That's the part nobody expected. Those rock piles, ankle-high and laughably simple, are now scattered by the thousands across the American West and even into Australia. They've helped bring water back to stretches of stream that had been bone dry for a generation. And the story of how that happened is stranger than the flood that was supposed to destroy them. Start with the gully itself, because you need to see it to understand the mistake everyone made. Picture a channel 8 to 12 feet deep, straight as a knife slash, walls of raw dirt, a thin trickle of muddy water at the bottom rushing through and gone. To most people driving past, that's just how the desert looks. Dry land, dry creek, nothing to save. That assumption is the whole problem, because that gully wasn't natural, it was a wound. Go back far enough and the same stream didn't cut down through the ground, it wandered across it. It curved and slowed and spilled sideways into a wide flat meadow. When rain came, the water spread out, soaked in, and sat in the soil like water in a sponge. The meadow stayed green into summer. There were pools, there were willows, there were tracks in soft mud. Then people changed the land. Cattle grazed the banks bare. Roads were cut across the slopes, funneling runoff into hard, fast channels. Streams were straightened to move water off the land quicker, and once a stream starts cutting down instead of spreading out, it feeds on itself. Fast water digs a deeper channel. The deeper channel moves water faster. That moves it faster still and digs deeper still. Hydrologists call it incision. You can call it a drain. The land had a sponge, and we punched a hole in the bottom of it. So here's the reversal that took people decades to see. The creek didn't dry up because the rain stopped. It dried up because the land lost its ability to hold the rain it still got. The water was still falling. It was just leaving too fast, racing down that trench and out of the valley before a single drop could soak in. The problem was never too little water. The problem was water that wouldn't stay. Now meet the man stacking rocks. His name is Bill Zedick, and for most of his life he would have laughed at himself. Zedick spent decades in the US Forest Service, a career wildlife biologist who came up trusting the serious tools of the trade: bulldozers, backhoes, tall concrete check dams. That was how you fixed a broken stream. You brought in machines, you poured concrete, you overpowered the water and forced it to behave. And he watched it fail. The big concrete check dams that were supposed to stop erosion often blew out in floods, or the water just cut around them and kept digging. Millions of dollars, heavy equipment, engineered structures, and the trenches kept getting deeper. The serious solution wasn't working. Zedick knew it, and it bothered him. Then, in the 1990s, working in the Zuni Mountains of New Mexico, alongside members of the Zuni Pueblo, he saw something that reorganized everything he thought he knew. The Zuni had been controlling erosion in their stream beds for over 1,000 years. Not with concrete, with small check dams of dry-laid rock and stepped stone pools. Tiny things, 1 to 3 feet tall, some barely a low apron of stones. They weren't built to stop the water, they were built to slow it, nudge it, and let it soak in instead of ripping down the valley. And here's what stopped Zedick cold. These techniques still worked. The physics the ancients had figured out was outperforming the machines his own profession had bet on. He said, in effect, that the hardest thing about this work is that most people can't even picture what a healthy stream is supposed to look like. They've only ever seen the broken version. They think the wound is the baseline. That single idea is the key to the whole story. A dry gully looks normal because nobody alive remembers it wet. We inherited a damaged landscape and mistook it for the natural one. The crisis wasn't only decline, it was forgetting. So Zidek did something humbling for a career engineer. He copied the ancients. He wrote the techniques down, drew the diagrams, and named the stepped stone pools Zuni bowls in honor of the people who invented them. He named the low rock aprons one rock dams because they're exactly that, rock laid only one rock high. Then he wrote a book with a title that is basically the entire philosophy in 4 words: let the water do the work. But wait, if it's this simple, why did nobody do it sooner? And why would loose rock survive what concrete couldn't? To answer that, you have to understand the real villain. It isn't the whole trench, it's one small feature at the top of it, called a head cut. Picture a tiny step in the stream bed, an ankle-high waterfall, sometimes no wider than a boot, maybe started by a single cow's hoof. Water pours over that little edge and claws at the dirt below it. The step moves backward, upstream, a little every storm. As it travels up the meadow, it drags the deep channel behind it, unzipping the wet meadow into dry trench as it goes. One tiny waterfall, no taller than your ankle, can drain an entire meadow. That's the bottleneck. And it creates a brutal trap. To rewater the meadow, you need plants, roots to hold the soil, vegetation to slow the flow. But to grow plants, you need the water to slow down and spread, and it won't slow down as long as that head cut keeps cutting. To spread the water, you need vegetation. To grow vegetation, you need to spread the water. Nature was stuck in a loop, and left alone, it would keep losing. This is where the concrete approach got the whole thing backwards. It tried to overpower the entire stream at once, one massive structure to force the water into submission. That's expensive, it's fragile, and it treats the symptom. The fast water was the symptom. The migrating head cut was the disease. Zidek and the people who worked with him weren't trying to rebuild the whole valley. They were only trying to stop that one small wound from spreading and then get out of nature's way. Here's how the rocks actually do it. At the head cut, you build a Zuni bowl, a stepped pool of stone that catches the falling water and absorbs its energy, so it stops clawing backward. The head cut freezes. It stops eating the meadow. Then, downstream, you lay the one rock dams, those low aprons of stone across the channel. And here is the genius of laying them only one rock high. They're too low for a flood to grab and rip out. When a big flow comes, the water rides up and over the top instead of tearing the structure apart. It doesn't fight the flood, it ducks under it. As the water rides over that rough rock, it slows just enough to drop the sediment it's carrying. Dirt settles. The channel bottom rises. Seeds catch in the fresh sediment. Plants root. Roots armor the bed and banks. The channel starts to widen and wander again, reconnects with its old floodplain, and the water begins spreading sideways and soaking in, exactly like it used to. The rock doesn't fix the stream. The rock just breaks the trap. The plants and the water do the rest. The trick was never force, it was leverage. Touch the one load-bearing point and the whole system starts healing itself. But did it actually work? Or is this just a nice theory? Look at Pueblo, Colorado Wash in Ganado, Arizona. When Zidek took that project on starting in 1997, the wash was a straightened, incised arroyo, a raw trench 12 to 16 feet deep, as narrow and steep-walled as an elevator shaft, choked with invasive tamarisk. Dead land by every casual measure. Today, that same stretch is a channel as wide as a 4-lane road, lined with cottonwoods and young willows. Bulrushes grow head-high. There are sandbars, curves, shade, standing water. Mule deer and coyote leave tracks in the mud along a current that actually flows. Same ground. It went from a knife slash in the dirt to a living corridor, not because anyone poured a river back in, but because somebody stopped the bleeding and let the land remember what it used to be. That mattered, and not just in one wash. Take Comanche Creek, in New Mexico's Valle Vidal. For close to 20 years, the non-profit Quivira Coalition, the fishing group Trout Unlimited, and others have used these same low-tech ideas to halt erosion and re-wet historic wetlands there. And the goal wasn't only water, it was fish, the native Rio Grande cutthroat trout, which needs cool, connected, complex stream habitat to survive. The simplified trench couldn't hold them. The healing, meandering, shaded channel could. Wouldn't a dam block the fish, though? That's the intuitive worry. But these aren't the walls you're picturing. A one-rock dam is a low, rough, spread-out apron. Water flows right over and through it. It doesn't block a stream, it reassembles one. And this is the point where the story stopped being one eccentric old man's hobby. The idea spread hard. Since Zedek's book came out, thousands of Zuni bowls and one-rock dams have been built across the West and into Australia. The big agencies that once bet on concrete came around. The Bureau of Land Management endorsed the methods. The Natural Resources Conservation Service went further. Its Range Technical Note number 40 puts a Zedek structure right on the cover and spends dozens of pages explaining how to build Zuni bowls and one-rock dams. The method the desert people invented and the Forest Service man rediscovered had become official federal guidance. Then came the legal ambush nobody outside the arid West would guess. In Colorado, water isn't just water. It's property, fought over more viciously than gold, governed by a century of rights and decrees. And senior water rights holders and the state's Department of Water Resources looked at these little rock piles and saw a threat. If a structure slows water and lets it soak into the ground, they argued, it might be storing water that legally belongs to someone downstream. Undecreed storage, an illegal diversion. Loose rock, 1 stone high, treated like a crime. That chilled the work. People and groups who wanted to heal streams suddenly worried about lawsuits. Think about how strange that is. The fix was so cheap and so effective that the fight over it moved from engineering to law. Nobody sues you over a plan that doesn't work. It took the legislature to break the logjam. In 2023, the Colorado General Assembly passed Senate Bill 23-270, clearing the way for low-tech restoration like this to be built without a water rights decree. The rock piles were legal. The mockery had traveled all the way to the State House and lost. Now, if you're still skeptical, you should be asking the obvious question. This is the Southwest. It's getting hotter and drier. Isn't slowing a trickle in a gully a bit like rearranging furniture in a burning house? What's the scale here? Here's where the numbers stop looking small and where a second worker enters the story. Because there's another animal that's been doing this exact job for 30 million years, the beaver. A beaver dam does what a one-rock dam does, but alive and self-repairing. It slows the stream, ponds the water, and forces that water sideways and down into the surrounding soil. And the hidden part is underground. Scientists describe beaver ponds pushing water into the earth around them, storing far more water in the soil than sits in the pond itself, on the order of 10 times as much. The visible pond is the small part. The real reservoir is invisible, held in the ground for the dry months. So how much could that matter? Researchers at Colorado State University mapped it out, and the figures are hard to believe. Colorado's stream networks could physically support well over 1 million beaver dams. Right now, the state is estimated to be at only a fraction of that, a small percentage of what the land could hold. Fill in even a portion of that gap, the CSU work suggests, and you'd add water to Colorado's soils measured not in swimming pools, but in a meaningful share of a major river's flow. Water banked underground, released slowly, exactly when the dry country needs it most. That's the same physics as the rock piles. Slow the water, spread the water, let the ground hold it. One version is stone laid by human hands. The other is a buck-toothed rodent that never had to hire a lawyer to build storage in the dark. And then came the part nobody had promised. In September 2025, near Turkey Springs in Colorado, a small crew of volunteers spent a single Saturday morning building a Zuni bowl and a couple of one-rock dams across a headcut. A few hours of work, loose rock. The usual quiet doubt hanging over it. Will this stuff even hold? 2 weeks later, the sky opened. A rain event locals described as a 100-year storm dumped around 7 inches of water on the area in 3 days. Massive flooding. This was precisely the moment every skeptic had predicted. The first real flood come to sweep the silly rock piles away. Someone who lived less than a mile from the site went out to check the wreckage. There wasn't any. The structures held. More than that, they did their job in the middle of a flood. They spread and slowed the roaring water and trapped sediment that would otherwise have poured downstream and silted up a reservoir below. The person monitoring it described the result, in the record kept by the local water conservancy, as stunning and entirely unexpected. The flood that was supposed to be the disproof became the proof. The thing meant to destroy the rock piles is the thing that vindicated them. That's the whole reversal in one storm. Concrete tries to beat the flood and sometimes loses. The one rock dam is too humble to fight the flood, so the flood can't get a grip on it, and the water does the work on its way through. Now, the honest part, because a story like this earns your trust only if it admits its limits. This is not magic, and it is not a cure for everything. These structures work in specific places under specific conditions. You need the right kind of stream, a gentle enough gradient, a channel that carries sediment, a valley shaped to spread out. Put them in the wrong spot and they do nothing, or worse. They need to be sized right, placed right, and sometimes maintained. They need landowners willing to try, and in some cases, agencies and neighbors who won't sue. Beavers too are picky. They need the right gradient, the right food trees like willow and aspen nearby, the right valley. You can't just drop this solution anywhere and walk away. And here's the limit that matters most. This work makes land hold on to the water it receives. It cannot conjure water that never falls. In a genuinely drier future, a rewatered meadow buys resilience, buffers a drought, stretches the season, cools a trout stream, banks runoff underground for summer. It doesn't repeal the climate. It's a way of keeping more of what you get, not a way of getting more. That limitation isn't a weakness in the story, it's the reason to believe it. The people doing this best don't promise a miracle. They promise leverage, a small correct action at the one point where the system was stuck. So think back to that old man in the dry gully, stacking flat rocks one layer high, while a neighbor bets the first flood will erase them. For most of his career, Bill Zedick believed the same thing his neighbor did, that fixing a broken stream meant machines and concrete and force. He had to watch the serious solutions fail, and then watch a 1,000-year-old idea succeed, before he understood what he'd been getting wrong. He's in his 90s now, white-bearded, and thousands of these structures across 2 continents carry the fingerprint of what he learned by finally being humble enough to copy the ancients. The land changed while the man changed. The trench that read as Dead Desert turned into a green corridor with tracks in the mud. The agencies that trusted concrete now hand out diagrams of rock. The state that called the piles illegal wrote them into law, and the flood that was supposed to end the whole idea became the best argument for it. There are more stories like this one, where the answer everyone laughed at was the answer nobody could see, because we'd forgotten what a working system even looked like. This was one of the clearest, because in the end, they didn't build new water. They stopped the old water from running away. They didn't overpower the stream, they removed the one small thing blocking the part of it that still knew how to heal. The fix was never bigger engineering, it was older engineering, and some of it was still alive.